for the next generation which are going to come on this earth. So in order to maintain the existence status of the natural resources or environmental attributes, there is a must that we have to respect and maintain this. So as long as the earth remains healthy, now we are sure that people will also remain healthy. What is then we have to do is we have to maintain and respect the earth. In economics, there is a concept called public good. This also generally we talk of something called public. So when we talk of something public, it is available for everyone. Similarly, whatever we talk in the society now as public, the same concept can also be extrapolated for the natural resources. So unfortunately, we don't have a specific market for these natural resources, and it is considered as public goods. So as we know, when there is the concept called public good comes in picture, there is two specific characteristics which flows into the system. One is non-excludable and other is non-rival. I'll give an example to make you to understand what exactly you mean by non-excludable, non-rival. I'll give an example of oxygen in the air. Suppose if we have an oxygen, I need an oxygen for our respiratory system. If I take the oxygen which is required for me, I cannot prevent you or other people to take the same quantity of oxygen from the nature. That is called non-excludable. It means I cannot exclude the other people to consume the resources, whether it is water, air, soil, forest, and rivers, etc. Okay. Then what is non-rival? It means if I consume a definite quantity of oxygen from the atmosphere for myself, I cannot reduce, it will not get reduced for the consumption of other people in the environment. Hope you have all understood what is the quantity overall which is available will not get reduced for the consumption of others. And then when we talk of public good, there is another concept which also follows, that is free rider problem. That means if something is available free of cost, or if it is a public good, what we generally do is, or what our tendency is, generally we consume more than what is actually required. I'll give an example like this. Suppose if anybody finds a board in front of his shop saying that buy one get three free, naturally, whether we need it or not, there is always a tendency to go and purchase that. Suppose if to extrapolate this concept, assume that to produce a commodity called A, we are going to consume natural resources by X and there is a generation of Y. On the other hand, if I have to consume such A pluses for 10, like for example 10 A products, naturally I am going to consume 10X natural resources and going to produce 9Y waste, which is again put back to the system. What I am trying to say here is, if you go on increasing the production consumption activities vis-a-vis then economic development, there is always a tendency to extract more natural resources. Vis-a-vis, there is always a generation of huge quantity of waste which is put back to the system. So what happens if we do like this? One way, we are extracting the natural resources which was supposed to be kept for the next generation. On the other hand, we are also polluting the natural resources or environmental attributes by dumping the waste, making that not suitable, not feasible for our production consumption activities or economic activities. So in a way, what we are doing is, we are not only reducing the quantity of resources which is available for the next generation, we are also talking on quality which is also a hamper for the next generation to be kept in. Unfortunately, all natural resources are considered as public good. In a way, what I am trying to say here is, for any of these natural resources, we don't have a specific market where we can bargain the natural resources. So how the resource flows takes place in the environment completely complies with the thermodynamic law. The resources put into the system, vis-a-vis waste is generated in the process. So as I said earlier, when we talk of economic development, there is always an increased energy consumption and material flow, which I have clearly explained to you all. Then, as I said earlier, once there is a high throughput, there is also a consumption of more resources, vis-a-vis there is a generation of more waste which is put into the system. Probably if you can see this slide, you will understand better the explanation which I've just given now. Then what is the need for environmental protection? Now, probably I need not have to explain this because COVID has taught us why environment is required for us. It is required for sustenance of life on this earth, whether it is flora, fauna. These ecosystem services, which is automatically developed by nature to sustain this earth, for example, water cycle, carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, nitrogen cycle, all these ecosystem services have made a platform for sustenance of life. If that is damaged by anthropogenic activities, then there is a need to protect this for survival of mankind on this earth. The most important point is degradation always diminishes the ecosystem capacity. As I said earlier, if there is a water which has a quality of TDS, in terms of TDS, like say 100 milligram per liter, if I'm going to discharge an industrial effluent which carries about 2000 or 3000 milligram per liter of TDS, naturally water source which has got 100 TDS will get increased. So there is an increased burden on these resources because of discharge of industrial effluent or maybe sewage into the system. See here, the meaning of the sentence what I've just explained now is degradation diminishes the ecosystem's capacity. That is most important. And we all know that ecosystem capacity is sustenance of our system on this earth. It also, that is degradation also leads to increased frequency and intensity of natural disasters and exacerbates the impact. If I have to give you an example for this, we can think of climate change. How the climate change or different composition of air pollutants in the atmosphere has changed the rain pattern across the world. Intensity, frequency, and the quantity have also changed a lot because of climate change in the recent past. And the most important, the crux is natural disasters always weakens the system which is already strained, And I just come to this air pollution because if I have to talk on sustainable transportation, definitely I have to talk on what is air pollution, why air pollution is an issue, and how we can curb the air pollution, making the sustainable transportation as a policy or a framework where I can reduce air pollution across the cities. Most of the people who are sitting here, I'm sure that they'll understand what is air pollution. It is the contamination of air in the atmosphere by emission of noxious gases and minute particulate matter in concentration that danger the health. This is most important. In concentration that is most endanger the health. I'll give you an example like this. If the particulate concentration in any ambient environment is say 40 microgram per liter, normal meter cube, I cannot assure that the people who are living in that region, everyone is healthy. No, because some may be sensitive to even 10 microgram per normal meter cube of dust particles. Some may be more resistant even to 100 microgram per normal meter cube. See, what I'm trying to say here is, if the pollutant concentration goes beyond a limit, I'll say carrying capacity, then naturally that causes serious impact on the health of flora and fauna. So even if you ask me, the environmental standards, that is the ambient air quality standards launched during 18/11/2009, I cannot say that that's a safe environmental standards. It means our aim is always has to achieve a zero pollution from the production consumption activities or any anthropogenic activities. So naturally, there are two types of air pollution which generally we discuss. One is the primary air pollutant, that is something which is emitted directly from the source. I give an example like cement factories here. If in the process of manufacturing the cement, lot of dust particles will get into the system, get into the environment. That dust directly can be called as a primary air pollutant. And secondary air pollutants, I can give an example of smog, fog, etc., where there is a reaction in the atmosphere once a pollutant is discharged. One or two or more pollutants will get combined together and forms a secondary pollutants in the atmosphere. And both are dangerous for the health of the environment and health of the people in a way. What are the contributing factors which we can think of in the recent past? I have listed certain things in my slide. You can think of any other anthropogenic activities or a natural activity which are significantly contributing for air pollution across the world. It may be increased population, it may be increased urban centers, it may be high in vehicular growth, traveling, burning of fossil fuels, operation of small-scale industries and mega industries in any region is a main source for air pollution in the recent past. Then why we have to discuss this as an issue? Everyone knows that air pollution has got an impact on large number of people. I can give an example. What has happened in Vizag in the recent days. Styrene has released, it has crossed about 5 kilometers radius, and people who are even beyond 1 kilometer have also suffered because of that. It is not a case in respect of water pollution. Suppose if assume that there is a water pollution happens, the water pollution will contained in a specific region, but that is not a case in respect of air pollution. You can think of any episodal air pollution incidents which have happened in the past, right from London smog, Bhopal gas tragedy, and in the recent Vizag issue, it has impacted to a large number of people. And most crux is involuntary exposure. Whether I need it or not, I have to be exposed. I can just explain this like this. The people in this LG polymer who are inside are affected. Assume that they are bound to get affected. But what is the issue of people who are just sleeping in their homes beyond 3 to 4 kilometers? So air pollution is more serious because it causes impacts on the long region across the people, and there is always an impact of involuntary exposure to this. And in terms of both long-term and short-term, it has got a serious impact. And not only it has got an impact on the health of people, it also has got an impact on the monuments, plants, etc. We can think of Taj Mahal, we can think of reduction in the crop in the specific regions because of increased air pollution, just as an example to this. What is the effect of air pollution? I have already told you some examples of effect of air pollution. It is enormous. It is enormous. It has both, as I said earlier, it has both impact on the human beings as well as flora and fauna totally across the environment. Specific to this health effects or health impacts, we all know the specific pollutant has got an impact on a specific tissue or a specific organ of a human being. I give an example like this. Carbon monoxide, it has got a serious impact on the circulatory system and heart. Ozone, it has got an impact on respiratory systems and lungs. Lead has got impact on nervous system. Particulate matter has got an impact on lung, etc., etc., etc. And certain organic pollutants are proven carcinogens. I can give an example of dioxins, furans, PAH, and benzenes, etc. These pollutants are proven carcinogens. So it is better, we have to ensure that there will not be any ambient pollutants like benzene, aldehydes, dioxins, and furans in order to safeguard the health of people. So this is a slide which indicates the statistics of the studies which are conducted across the globe on the impacts of air pollution. These are only the numbers, but these numbers should create a fear on us that the air pollution levels in the recent past across the globe is getting increased because of anthropogenic activities. As I said earlier, even though these are the numbers, these numbers should make us a fear so that we can work towards curbing the air pollution or reducing the air pollution, in fact, preventing the air pollution as much as possible. Again, this is another thing. In this study, only two pollutants were considered, ozone and particulate matter. See the number, 6,500 per annum. It's a premature death. And for respiratory diseases, 3,000 per annum, hospital admission, cardiovascular diseases, 350,000 per annum, asthma attacks. As I said earlier, even though these are all only the numbers, but these numbers should create fear, in turn motivates us to create a policy so that we can reduce air pollution across the globe. This is a slide which clearly indicates the health of air health in Delhi, in other metro cities of India. This is another slide. These are all paper cuttings. It says that the pollution at Delhi is so choke that even it's very difficult to breathe, and we all know that months together schools and other offices were closed just because of air pollution. This is another slide, another paper cutting, and just come back to the Bangalore city. And whatever I'm going to talk, it is just prior to the COVID issue, where we have totally stopped all the activities from March 23rd of 2020. So to start with, there was a study done during 2012 to identify the different sources in Bangalore for contribution of urban air pollution in Bangalore. And to surprise, and as expected, 42% of air pollution is contributed by transport sector alone. It means almost 50% of the total air pollution in Bangalore is contributed by vehicles, and about 20% is from road dust, and about 14% is from industry, and 14% is from construction activities. See, why I have shown you this is, all these areas, we can definitely have either a policy framework or a pollution control system where we can reduce the pollution level of the environment of air in Bangalore. Okay, that is why probably these statistics will always indicate us that where we stand and where we have to go about further, both in terms of positive as well as in negative. If we are too much negative, those negative will gives us an indication that we are in a very danger zone, and we have to move towards positive side, making any sorts of alterations. It may be process modification, it may be policy, it may be voluntary, etc., to come back to the original status. That is why these numbers will always indicate us the status where we stand actually. Okay, and this is another slide which clearly indicates the land use change pattern in Bangalore since 1973 to 2020. If you see this picture, it can clearly say that during 73, green area was very high. And because of changed economic activities scenario in Bangalore, similar to other metro cities of the world and India, the green cover has reduced, and mostly the construction activities have taken place. The statistics, as I said earlier, has given below that paved surface has increased by 1,005% in the last 40 years. That means the construction area has increased and the green cover area has started declining or reduced to a maximum extent since last 40 years. And green cover area, as I said earlier, there is a reduction from 68% in 73 to 25% in 2012. Probably if you consider after 2012, including the construction activities of metros, underpasses, etc., it has still reduced further. And as we all know, that area of pond, lakes has reduced to a less than 1/3 from 3.4% to just 1% in the same period. So what we have to understand here is, even the land is also limited source. So there is a need to judicially use this land in order to keep the sustenance of the growth in terms of both economic and the human growth. So that is where these statistics will give a clear indication that where we stand and how to go about further. And it is predicted that the green cover is going to reduce drastically in the next few years in Bangalore. And this is a slide which clearly indicates the growth of vehicles in Bangalore since 1972 to 2019. Just imagine that it has increased from 0.76 million to 88.68 million today, keeping the road network almost same. So naturally, when you ply more vehicles on the same length and breadth of road, there is always a choke, there is always a congestion, there is always an increase in the pollutant concentration in the atmosphere. This is again another study done by IISc on the total tree cover in Bangalore. We all know that in spite of such development, trees are the only sink for carbon dioxide, that is a greenhouse gas from the atmosphere. Trees can absorb about 6 kg of carbon dioxide in a year from a single tree. And if we plant 100 million trees, we can able to reduce about 18 million tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We can able to absorb 18 million tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year. So for every 1 ton of new wood that grows, we can able to cut down 1.5 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In fact, we can also produce 1.07 tons of oxygen, which is required for the sustenance of life. That is the status of the capacity of tree. What is the status of same tree in Bangalore? There is again a study done during 2013-14 on the total green cover area of Bangalore. The study reveals that the tree density across different PBMP wards is less than 1 for 500 people in some areas, and it is 1.25 per person in some other areas. It means there are certain wards which has got a high density of green cover, and there are certain wards where there is no tree cover at all. And for every person in Bangalore, they should have about 8 trees to offset the human respiratory carbon dioxide and to have adequate oxygen. But unfortunately, in Bangalore, we have just 1 tree for 7 people, and that is very, very low when we compared with the 4 trees in Gujarat and 2 trees in Nasik, Maharashtra. So what we are doing here now in Bangalore is, one way we are increasing the construction activities, which ultimately increases the particulate matter concentration and vis-a-vis increased different pollutant concentration. We are also increasing the vehicular density across the area, and unfortunately we are reducing the green cover areas and making the ambient air more worse than ever. It means Bangalore air not only has the criteria pollutant, but it also has got heavy metals in it, which is making a more unhealthy situation for Bangaloreans. Then what is we are doing with now? We are doing this ambient air quality monitoring across the city. We have installed about 31 continuous ambient air quality monitoring stations. About 28 are manual monitoring stations across Bangalore. Why we have to understand the air quality of Bangalore? As I said earlier, the monitoring will always gives us an idea that where we stand and how to go about further, either to reduce or to increase if it is in a positive way. So ambient air quality monitoring, we all know that it's a systematic, long-term assessment of pollution level, measuring the quantity and types of pollutants in the surrounding environment, that is in the outdoor air. It means we have to measure the concentration of sulfur dioxide, we have to measure the oxides of nitrogen, we have to measure ozone, CO, CO2, and then benzene, PAH, lead, particulate matter 2.5, 10, etc. in order to know the health status of the air which we are breathing. So monitoring will always help us to assess the level of pollution in relation to the ambient air quality standards. If you ask me, this is a standard notified during 2009 by CPCB. It says there are 2 standards. One is the annual average standards and the 24-hour standard for the specific pollutants, and it is also regional specific. It means we have got a standard for industrial, residential, and rural areas, and we have a standard for eco-sensitive areas, which is more stringent than the industrial, residential, and rural areas. So what I am trying to say here is, even though, as I said earlier, even though there are standards, we cannot claim that as a safe environmental standards. That's what I mean here. So if assume that the particulate matter concentration we have achieved to 60 microgram per nanometer cube, I cannot say that all the Bangaloreans who breathe the air which has got 60 microgram are healthier. No. Some may be sensitive even to 10, and some may be sensitive to more than 100 microgram per nanometer cube. So our aim has always been to ensure that there will be a zero pollution from our anthropogenic activities. So come back to the ambient air quality. Again, the ambient air quality is measured in terms of air quality index. This is also a notification issued by Central Pollution Control Board. It means if the air quality index is say between 0 to 50, it means the air quality is fairly good. As I said earlier, I cannot claim that it is perfectly good. It is fairly good. So as you go further, let's say about 150 to 200 or 201 to 300, it always gives you a signal of danger that the air quality is getting more deteriorated, and there must be a check for any of these anthropogenic activities to ensure that the air quality will come down to at least good in the future. Okay. So this is a slide which fairly indicates the ambient air quality monitoring stations across Bangalore. This is not actually now. The number of monitoring stations has increased in the recent past, especially from 2016, when CPCB has declared Bangalore as critically polluted area. Okay, there is a need to monitor at different places, and Pollution Control Board, along with Central Pollution Control Board, that is State Pollution Control Board, along with Central Pollution Control Board, has installed continuous and manual monitoring stations across Bangalore now. Again, as I said, these data, I'm talking of prior COVID. Okay, I'm also going to touch the air quality in the COVID period. So, as usual, the particulate matter concentration in Bangalore across the area is very high compared to the standard. Somewhere like Silk Board Junction, etc., it is 2 to 3 times higher than the standard. Suppose if I say the PM 2.5 is 40 microgram per normal meter cube, I mean at Central Silk Board, the concentration is about 120 microgram per normal meter cube. So this is a graph which indicates that across Bangalore, in most of the places, particulate matter is a criteria pollutant which is significantly contributing for unhealthy air in the Bangalore atmosphere. So this is another station at Yeshwanthpur. This also states that the air quality in terms of particulate matter is very high compared to the standard. This is the one at Pina Industrial Area. And this is a paper cutting that is with regard to the health status of ambient air quality of Bangalore. It says about 25% of the children in Bangalore will suffer from asthma. And in terms of lung cancer, Bangalore stands at third place. So we cannot say proudly that Bangalore is a third place in lung cancer. It clearly indicates the way in which we are moving towards unhealthy environment in terms of urban air quality. And this is a slide which indicates the air quality status before COVID and during the COVID. And this picture, two pictures, one which is to the left is air quality during April, May 2019, and the slide which is in the right side is the air quality during same period, that is April and May during 2020. So here it has clearly indicated that the check for economic developments and economic activities in any city can bring back the health status of the environment. At least from these slides, we can confidently say that the air quality will definitely improve if we put a check on the economic activities in terms of industrial activities, in terms of commercial activities, in terms of moving the vehicles outside the home, etc. So probably, I don't know the status of Bangalore during 70s. So if I see the right side of my slide, I can presume that probably the air quality was like this during 70s and 80s in Bangalore. Okay. The number of air quality, that is, if I have to say in terms of numbers, air quality in some areas in Bangalore has come down to 10, 15 in the lockdown period. So we have to think of now sustainable development or sustainable transportation, keeping this scenario of March to July in our mind. So our target now should be to target the 20 microgram per nanometer cube of particulate matter in Bangalore, whatever development we are going to take after this COVID issue. So what is the next which we can think of as the prevention of air pollutants which is getting into the system? In fact, to say the Air Pollution Act, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1981 also gives a thrust for prevention of air pollutants rather than controlling. So whatever anthropogenic activities we think of now further, our aim always should be to prevent the pollution first and then think of control. Even after controlling the pollutant, if something comes out as inevitable as energy mass and energy mass equation or energy mass balance, whatever small quantity which comes out as an inevitable waste, that can be handled by the environment. So what is prevention then? So prevention is, as I said earlier, it is the elimination of pollutants, may not be air pollutants, also maybe water pollutants, hazardous waste, etc. at the source. So what we can think of, hello?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Some of the participants
Yeah.
have written that the slides are not visible.
1 second, ma'am. Do you want me to put again? I'll just close this and put again.
Just one previous slide, sir. You showed the spatial distribution.
Yeah, yeah. Is it clear now?
For me, it is clear. Some of the that kindly pin speakers have written. So
Okay.
I think from here you can continue, sir. Sorry, sir.
No, it is visible.
Yeah, for me it's visible. You can just proceed. If any of the participants, if they go ahead, I'll just inform. So you can proceed.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Yeah. I was just talking about prevention of air pollutants. Once we talk of prevention, then we can adopt certain activities so that we can reduce the pollution at the source. Like, for example, we can replace the machine which is producing more pollutants. We can modify the process, or we can totally eliminate the process which is producing more pollutants. So, in order to ensure the prevention of air pollutants or prevention of any sort of pollutions, we can also think of process modification, we can think of raw material exchange, we can think of machinery replacement, etc. So, our motto should always be to ensure that there is a strategy which always ensures that there is a prevention of both hazardous or non-hazardous activities. It may be regulated or unregulated. So, prevention of pollution should be the first step in order to achieve healthy environment. So, once it is prevented, as I said earlier, once you prevent the pollution at the source, then the control activity comes. I'll give an example like this. Suppose if there is a paper and pulp industry or a cement industry, if I have to talk of air pollution significance, if you are producing, say, 100 kg of product, and by producing 100 kg of product, if you are generating about 10 kgs of waste, hello? 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 Hello?
Sir, you are audible. You can proceed, sir.
Okay. There was some disturbance. I just thought somebody is making a remark. Okay. I'll just proceed. Yeah. I was just talking about the control strategy. Suppose if you have to produce about, say, 100 kg of product, assume that there is a production of 10 kg of waste. So by adopting certain strategies, if you can reduce, instead of producing 10 kg, if you can produce only 5 kgs of waste, then in that 5 kg, you can use some control technology to remove the pollution up to 3 kgs. So totally, even if you are assume that if you are generating 10 kg, if you can adopt best practices in the process, you can reduce the pollution by 5 kg, and by putting a pollution control system, you can reduce the pollution by another 3 kg. So totally, you can reduce 8 kgs. So whatever 2 kgs of waste which is coming out as an inevitable product, that can be emitted to environment, so that the 2 kg, the earth will sustain through its regeneration capacity. So hope you all have followed whatever I said. So in order to have a control mechanism, we have to have an air quality management as a tool to control air pollutants from different activities. So as I said earlier, if you want to give me an example, we can think of back filters, electrostatic precipitators, scrubbers, etc. as a efficient control equipment to control air pollutant from specific activities. If I have to talk of catalytic converters from vehicle, that also is an efficient equipment to control air pollutants from the vehicles. So our selection of control technology will always depend on the pollutant types which is coming out from a system, and the environmental, engineering, economic and other social factors. So what is done once you prevent and control? What is the air pollution control philosophy? If we have to holistically talk, as I said earlier, the air pollution control philosophy lies on four different philosophies. One is the emission standard, air quality standard, emission taxes, and cost benefit standards. I'll explain these concepts by giving an example. I'll give an example of cement industry. Assume that there is a cement industry which produces a Portland cement and emits particulate matter. The emission standards talk of the standard issued or specified for a particulate matter emission from a cement industry. And as on today, 30 microgram per nanometer cube is a particulate matter standard for a cement industry. So I have fixed emission standard as 30 microgram per nanometer cube for a cement industry, say X. Then I have to describe air quality standards. As I said earlier, November 2009 notification will clearly indicates the ambient air quality standard. So as per that, the standard for particulate matter is 40 microgram per nanometer cube. It means assume that there are 5-6 cement industries which are producing 30 microgram per nanometer of particulate matter. If everything accumulates in the atmosphere, it should never cross ambient air quality standard of 40 microgram per nanometer cube. Hope you have not followed what I said. So there is a double check here. One is we are controlling or we are checking the air pollution emission from emission standards. We are also checking the air pollutant concentration in the atmosphere by imposing ambient air quality standard. So hope you have followed what is emission standard and air quality standard. So then comes to emission tax. Assume that a cement industry is given a 30 standard, and if it discharges 60 microgram per nanometer cube of particulate matter from his chimney, then the emission tax should be the tax which is imposed for increased 30 microgram per nanometer cube. Hope you have followed. 30 is his standard, but he is discharging 60. So he is consuming extra, or he is emitting extra particulate matter concentration into the atmosphere. That creates an air quality deterioration in the atmosphere. So for that 30 increases, we are going to impose a tax or a fine so that industry encourages to get into the system to provide pollution control equipment to ensure that he will discharge less than 30 and complies with the standard, but he refuses to pay as a tax. So in economics, there is a concept called Pigouvian tax. It says very clearly that the marginal social benefit should always be more than marginal social cost. It means if I impose a number, say you have to pay 10 lakh rupees, so industry should always makes his mind to comply rather than paying a 10 lakh rupees as a tax because he is emitting 30 microgram more than the standard. That is what emission tax is. And we all know what is a cost benefit. As I said earlier, marginal social benefit should always be more than the marginal social cost. So if something is there like that, then we can ensure that there is a lesser pollutant concentration in the atmosphere. Then what do you mean by sustainability, or what we are talking of sustainable development? So it is the level of economic activity which leaves the environmental quality intact. That is what we say now. So whatever we do, we have to keep the environment at the center and ensure that the activity, that is anthropogenic activities which we have proposed, will always have a minimum impact on the environment. So that is what the sustainable development is also talks of. So it means maximizing the net benefit of economic development, maintaining the services and quality of natural resource over a time. So what we have forgotten and what we have practiced in the past, it is coming back into the system. So what we were doing in the period of, say, Chalukyas, Chandragupta Maurya, Ashoka, Akbar, etc., now we have to think of those developments without hampering the health of the environment. Suppose if it doesn't happen, what happens? Probably if you can concentrate on the two blue lines which I have given now, you can correlate that to a present pandemic of COVID. It says the termination of growth by self-restrainment and conscious policy. So we have to attain the sustainability or sustainable development by making self-restrainment, voluntary compliance, or through a conscious policy. It means prevent the COVID spreading by keeping the social distance, not going out from the home, making minimum activities on the road. So that's what I mean here in the first line. The termination of growth by self-restrainment and conscious policy, an approach that avoids the collapse. So if we can ensure that there is a self-restrainment, that means there is a voluntary compliance and there is a conscious policy. ಈಚೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ನವರು ಒದಿತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾದ್ರೆ, then that will avoid the collapse of the society. Or if doesn't happen, then the termination of growth by collision with the natural limit, resulting in societal collapse. You can just think of the present situation which we are facing since March, which clearly gives the idea of economic development and economic growth, which also is a basis for sustainable development. So if we don't put a check for these type of activities, there is always a collapse of the whole system in terms of economic development and economic welfare. So what is you mean by then? Suppose if I talk of sustainability or sustainable development, what exactly it refers to in transportation sector? So what I have to think of to ensure that there is a sustainable transportation, to ensure that there's minimum pollution and minimum pollutants in the ambient air, but a maximization of economic development and economic welfare. So to continue, the efficient transportation, we all know that is a driver for economic growth. That is why during the Vajpayee's period, he has made this corridors, village roads, Pradhana Mantri roads, all those things. So in the modern society, in the modern economic development, transportation sector plays a vital role in terms of economic growth. So it can be achieved by connecting the goods and services to the market. And see, it refers to the goods and services. There should be an easy access for transporting the goods and services to the market, vice versa, for the people to reach their social activities. It may be education, it may be healthcare, it may be livelihood opportunities or jobs, etc. So what I mean here is the efficient transportation is a sign of societal growth. That's what the overall it is. Okay, the growth of private vehicles in all major cities are unsustainable. I can give an example of Bangalore, which I have just showed earlier. 0.76 million vehicles to 88 million vehicles in the last 40 years. In the last one decade itself, there is about 250% increase in the vehicular growth in Bangalore. That is from 2001 to 2019, there is 240% of increase in the vehicle growth with the same length and breadth of road networks in Bangalore. So what do you mean with this background, what do you exactly mean by sustainable transportation? It means the transportation that is green and has a low impact on the environment. Probably now we have to think, in this type of scenario, is it easy to achieve sustainable transportation? If you ask me, I'd say it is very, very difficult unless and until we have multi policy system. It may be economic, it may be econometric instruments, or it may be command and control, or it may be any other policy frameworks. With a single policy, we cannot achieve sustainable transportation of both having a green as well as low impact on the environment. So it also says of balancing the current and future needs. It means think of 60s and 70s where people will have had only bicycles as their only mode of transportation, and today think of metros, monos, aeroplanes, and different types of motor cars, etc., which are plying on the road. So there has to be a balance in the current growth of vehicles as well as in the future needs. So what is sustainable for Bangalore? This is again a study done by C-Stoops. It says, as I said earlier, there is an increase of 280% of vehicles since 2007 to 2020. Just imagine the number. And the average city witnesses about 100 to 110 lakh trips of every day, given a small bifurcation here. So what ultimately this slide teaches us is, whatever transportation system or a mechanism we have right now is not sustainable for Bangalore. That is what we mean here. As I said earlier, these numbers will always give an indication that where we stand. So if this is a status of today, what we have to do in the future to ensure there is a sustenance of transportation in Bangalore. Okay, what we have to do, again, as I said earlier, there should be a blending of 2-3 policies, which also makes the people to fear. That is economic policies. It may be tax, it may be parking fees, it may be congestion pricing, etc. Along with a policy which also legally supported to ensure that there is a long-term sustenance of these activities which we take out to achieve sustainable transportation in any other cities, which is quite similar to Bangalore. Okay, I've just listed a few things here. One is the congestion pricing. As I said earlier, there should be a vehicle user fee for the people who are going into the congested areas. And there is another concept of high parking fees, which is now imposed in Bangalore at certain areas. And there is again a restriction to the areas where there is a high density of pollutants. And the people who are traveling in these zones will be restricted to travel because of increase in the travel time, pollutants, blockings, etc. Okay, there is always a need to create a zone, maybe between the bus stations, railway stations, and metro centers, where only the few mobility people will be allowed to check in, and those people will be given a permission to use the transportation facilities. And these are all tried in Bangalore. The priority lanes for BMTC buses, cycles, auto rickshaws, etc. These also should be implemented in a holistic manner. See, I cannot say that if you implement one concept, we are going to achieve sustainable development. As I said earlier, it is definitely not that we should have multiple strategies, multiple action plans to ensure that. And again, those multiple strategies, policies, etc., should be regional specific. I cannot take a policy which is used in US or which is used in Sweden to put into the Bangalore environment or transportation area. No, it's not like that. So if you have to evolve a policy, it should be regional specific. It should be more conversant to the people. The people should accept it, that they can use this policy so that overall achievement can be done. And there are other things like we should provide incentives to public transport system, like maybe issuing a pass and other things. Or the company which says that the employees travels by a bus, they are going to reimburse the bus charges or something like that. And there is a direct monetary benefit and of course a non-physical incentives, which makes the people to get encouraged to use public transport system and to minimize the traffic, travel time, congestion, pollution, etc. Okay, and if you have to achieve, there is always a need to improve the public transport system, and there should be integration of transport system. It may be rail system, it may be motorized system, or it may be waterways, etc. As ma'am said, I visited Sweden during 2019 November. I saw every mode of transportation in Sweden. Okay. There was a roadway, there was a metro, there was a mono, and there was also waterways. And by purchasing a ticket at one center, you can travel in any of these modes to reach your destination. And there is always an end-to-end destination which is missing in Bangalore. So if I have to get into the core areas or inside the specific locality, I don't have any other facility other than your private vehicles or auto rickshaws. That should not be the case when we are thinking of a sustainable transportation system. Every nook and corner of a city should be connected, either of any of the modes. It may be through your taxis, it may be through your public transport system, it may be through metros, it may be suburban railways, etc., to achieve the sustainable transportation system. End-to-end connection should be there. So people should feel that I can reach my place or my destination by using any of these facilities with a public transport system. That is what our motto should be to attain the sustainable transportation across the cities, which also ensures the health of the environment and health of the atmosphere or the air environment. I have also listed certain things like there should be an encouragement for walking, cycling, minimum usage of private vehicles, depending on more public transport systems, etc., as a solution for sustainable development. These are all again few action plans one can think of to achieve sustainable transportation. Most important thing is integration of transport development plan with a land use plan. This is most important. See, probably we have all experienced that. See, in order to reach half a kilometer, because of the one-way restrictions, we have to travel 1.5 kilometer or 2 kilometers in Bangalore. That should not be the case, which ensures more consumption of fuel vis-a-vis more pollution, more time, etc. So there should always be an integration of transport development system with a land use pattern. That is the most important thing. And the other thing is, which I have seen in Sweden, is effective traffic control system with coordinated signaling. I'll give you what I saw in Sweden. If you want to cross a signal, you need not have to wait for the red signal to come. In every signal, you will have a switch, because pedestrians and cyclists will given more respect in that country. So if anybody is walking, anybody is going in a wheelchair, anybody is cycling, they will be given a first preference. So whatever movement which happens through bus, trains, etc., if I want to cross a signal, there will be a switch in the pole. I have to press that. Immediately, the red signal will get converted into a green signal. So I can comfortably walk and cross the road. Only after crossing the road, the green signal will come for the other vehicles. So that should be the thing. What I am trying to say here is, there should be an effective traffic control system with a coordinated signaling. Suppose if there is a signal here, along the line, if this signal gives you a green light, all the signals on the road should turn into green, so that there will be a minimum usage of fuel, minimum air pollutants, something like that. Okay, this all should become a comprehensive model for effective implementation, or we can prepare an effective action plan consisting of all these issues to ensure the transportation, sustainable transportation in any of the cities across the world. And this is a slide because the energy policy of Karnataka and even the country has put a target of 2030 that most of these urban centers will out from the fossil fuel vehicles. It should be either solar driven or electric driven. If you can think of a Euro 6 policy, immediately after Euro 4, skipping Euro 5, and recently banning all diesel vehicle registration from April 2020, we have to attain the sustainability, and we have to prepare an action plan to achieve these targets by 2020. That is, the Karnataka electrical vehicle policy aims to convert 50% of its entire vehicle fleet by 2030. So it means, I've given statistics here. As on today, if you see, there are 57 lakh two-wheelers. It has to have, out of that, 93 lakh vehicles should be converted into electrical vehicles by 2030. Hope everyone is hearing me. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
This is a slide which, as I said earlier, will give you the target. Probably, we also have to prepare an action plan, giving a time limit for each activity to ensure the healthy air of urban centers across the country. As we all know, in the recent past, that is during 2015-16, CPCB has declared the critically polluted areas. This job they are doing since 1985. In 1995, Bangalore was at 28th place, and today in 2015, we are in the 8th place. It means more stringent action should be put into the system to reduce the air pollution level in Bangalore. And this is a quite a similar case across the metro cities of India, including Delhi, Kanpur, Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, etc. Okay. Finally, I just come to the last few slides. As we all know, I'm making a conclusion for air pollution. I've already discussed air pollution is a threat to the humankind or mankind. So it has got a serious impact on the recent past, and First and foremost thing is we have to understand that we are the part of nature. We should not exclude ourselves from the nature. So whatever impact we are getting is a result of assuming ourselves as a different entity during 2060s, 70s, and 80s, where we have started with industrialization, agricultural revolution, and other anthropogenic activities. So now, at least we have learned a lesson that we are the part of the environment. We should understand the close relationship of environment with our health. So that is the most important. Then only we can prepare an action plan to curb the air pollution across the cities. So finally, air pollution control will help us to conserve the resources, encourage the implementation of programs, risk reduction, improve the environmental quality, allows the regeneration, conservation, etc., etc. So, what is the conclusion which I can take off for sustainable transportation? I said earlier, when it reduces cost, it also saves resources, lot of resources. In turn, keeping the health of both the environment as well as people. So it provides multiple choices in the public transport system at different points. So reduction in number of private vehicles on the road will always reduce the accidents also. So it encourages for shared mobility in public transport among the citizens and works the shift from private to public mode. So and finally, non-motorized transport system like walking, cycling, etc. can be encouraged by providing walking and now in the city. Finally, I thank everyone, people who are the coordinators of this program for giving me an opportunity to talk on this topic. I once again thank all of you for sitting quietly and hearing from me. I don't know how much I have impacted on you people and how many people could able to really get the glimpse of my thought process. Thank you very much. And before I conclude, I always keep this slide which teaches us that we are within the nature. Until a man duplicates a blade of grass, nature can laugh at his so-called scientific knowledge. Two things which I have learned from this is we are not beyond the nature. So we cannot produce the grass which is there in the nature in spite of such a development of reaching the moon, reaching the Saturn, reaching the sun, etc., and getting into the system. And we always have to keep our foot on the land, like how Kumpu says, ನಾವು ಎಷ್ಟೇ ಎತ್ತರಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದ್ರೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾಲುಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾತ್ರ ಭೂಮಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ಬೇಕಂತ. It is better if we learn to live within the nature rather than going beyond the nature. Probably now I can confidently think or say that every one of us have learned because of this COVID that we are the part of nature and nature is not part of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a very wonderful presentation. And regarding the smart city concept, how after reducing the air pollution, we can have a sustainable development that is related to smart city concept, and very nice presentation regarding the tree concept, that is tree cover, ambient air quality monitoring, AAQM monitoring station. Of course, the public should be aware that even the Pollution Control Board, they are involved in the monitoring the stations. And very good presentation regarding the spatial distribution of particulate matter, and regarding the action plan taken, and regarding the electric vehicles, that is a sustainable transportation. So very good presentation, sir. But now some of the participants, they have raised some questions. Sir, can we take some questions now?
Please.
One of the questions is that you have shown the spatial distribution map of that is the particulate matter in Bangalore. Can you give a short summary of how that can be done, and what all the data and tools required to construct such a map?
See, basically, we need to have ambient air quality data across different locations, that is across different monitoring stations. Okay, that is most important. And with regard to the results which we have arrived, we all know during the lockdown period, most of the activities, I should say, almost 99% of the anthropogenic activities were stopped. So that is the reason why we have got that a result that is less than 20 microgram in terms of particulate matter, etc. So regarding the monitoring activities, as I said earlier, we should have monitoring mechanism across the locations. Again, it depends on geographical location. We should have a monitoring system, and if we get a data, probably we can extrapolate through the GPS. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes. That's what even I wanted to ask. Which are the tools used in the preparation of the map?
See, it is GIS mapping actually. See, overlapping the air quality data on the geographical region. Okay, that is where we have established monitoring stations. Okay, monitoring locations. That is how we could able to generate that graphs and data.
Okay, sir. Another question says that is there a concept of emission offset in the air pollution control philosophy?
You cannot say emission offset. In turn, it is, as I said earlier, we have industry-specific standards in EPA, that is Environmental Protection Authorities, and apart from that, we have ambient air quality standards. So both clubbed together, put together, we should ensure that the ambient air qualities will not exceed the standard which is specified for a particular pollutants. That is what it should be.
Okay, sir. Another question says which formula to use for ambient, air quality index, that is the AQI.
Air quality index.
Yeah, we have found that
Yeah.
so many different formulas are there for the calculation. So which is the correct one? Then?
Yes, yes. Right. What I suggest you for the students and the research scholars are there is a CPCB guidelines to monitor the air quality and also to evolve the air quality index. Okay, you can do two types. One is considering only the particulate matter of PM10 and PM2.5, and the other by considering the other criteria pollutants like NOx and SO2. And guidelines developed or issued by CPCB clearly explains how we can arrive at the specific air quality index for a specific region. If anyone is interested, they can contact me. I'll guide them that where they get the information and how to calculate air quality index considering 2 pollutants and considering 4 pollutants together. Okay.
Next question, what are the most environmental friendly and sustainable methods of transportation? I think some of the points you have already covered in the presentation. So briefly, if you can highlight.
Yes. See, first and foremost thing is the fuel which we are using, that should be green. Okay. I'll tell you the experience which I just experienced in Sweden. In Sweden, they are not using the fossil fuel for vehicles. The methane generated by a municipal solid waste processing site will be supplied to buses and the taxis. See, they don't have two-wheelers there. There is only a taxi and private cars and cycles. Okay, and all the two-wheelers are electrically driven vehicles. So, if you use a clean green fuel, there itself you can curb the emission of particulate matter. Forget about SO2 and NOx. I'm not going to deal with that. Because in India, across the cities, if you observe the air quality data, in all the places, particulate matter is a significant contributor to increase the air pollution at the cities. So our first aim should be to check the emission of dust from different activities. That is particulate matter, I should say. Okay. So burning of these fossil fuels will create huge quantity of particulate matter in terms of carbon soot and carbon. Okay. My suggestion is to curb the usage of these fuels first. So as much as possible, better to use clean green fuels like LPG, CNG, solar, etc., or electric, etc., so that we can reduce the air quality, we can reduce the air pollutants in terms of dust pollution across the cities. That is what I suggest. After that, proper networking of these vehicles and the roads. As I said earlier, Sweden, if you get into Dresden or Lund, etc., everywhere, you have all sorts of transportation. If you want to go in a bus, you can go by train. If you want to go by train, you can go by bus. If you want to go by bus, you can go by cycle. If you want to go by cycle, you can go by you can get into the bus. If you want to get into a tram, you can get into the tram. If you want to use the waterways, you can have boats and other things. You can get in, and by purchasing a single ticket in the morning, you can reach your destination by using all modes or any one of these modes, which always makes the people to feel to use the public transport system rather than going with a private vehicle. That is how our policy should be, to encourage the people to use more public by making the public easy and comfortable for them.
Okay, sir. Sir, another two more questions. In context with in incentives for sustainable transportation, what is stopping the government from making
Yeah.
all bicycle related products tax free?
Um, I don't want to talk much on government policies. See, generally, we just think of what we have practiced since last 30, 40 years. Uh, Generally, our ancestor, maybe my father and forefather, used to walk more rather than going by a bicycle or any other vehicle. Today, if you ask my son or in fact ourselves, if we want to purchase something which is there in the next road, we use our two-wheeler. That attitude should go out. That is what live within the nature says. Now, the people will propagate that by walking you can increase the health. But that was an inherent attitude which was developed by our ancestors, which we have forgotten in the recent past. Now we are getting awareness about that. So that motto should be there with each and every one, so that we can not only reduce the consumption of fossil fuels, but also makes the environment healthy and in turn our health. That's what I feel personally.
Okay. One last question, sir. Are there studies which show correlation between traffic densities and higher per capita oil consumption?
Naturally, no. In fact, there are few studies which I have seen from my PhD, which clearly says that the high traffic congestion will definitely consume more fossil fuels, in turn emits more. So always when we say that, we also experienced it. If a signal says more time, it is better to off the vehicle and then start once the green signal comes. That's what it is. So there is a direct correlation between the congestion and the fuel consumption. There is a relationship.
Okay. Sir, another two more short questions. Can we collect data
Please.
for 1 year and predict air quality index by using artificial neural networks? Should I repeat the question, sir? Should I repeat the question, sir?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I repeat
Can
the
you
question?
can you yes, can you
Can we collect data for 1 year and predict air quality index by using artificial neural networks?
madam? Now I am hearing. Can you please
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to repeat. Can we
Yes,
collect
ma'am. Yes, please.
the data for 1 year and predict the air quality index by using artificial neural networks?
Yes, yes, yes. It is. There is a chance you can predict even for 5 years. Collect the data of 1 year, we can predict the data for the future development. Again, there are certain constraints, like whatever we assume that there is a increase in vehicle numbers, there is an increase in fuel consumption, etc. If you take all those into consideration, there is a chance we can predict the future air quality index.
Okay. So this is the last question from one participant. So he has
Yeah.
given three questions. In short, I'm going to tell the questions, sir. This will be the last question. What is your
No
opinion?
problem. I can take any other questions.
Okay.
If time permits, I can take.
Yeah, yeah. It is because it is again a discussion. What is your opinion
Yeah.
on comprehensive traffic and transportation plan of Bangalore? And the next one, in Bangalore and in India, The main problem comes with the implementation of policies. How do we achieve effective implementation in the current context? Then again, the same participant, how can we preserve trees at the same time work on the development projects such as the peripheral ring road, satellite town, ring road, etc., as these projects are going to reduce a lot of congestion.
No, all the questions are right, but most of the things talks of policies of government,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
which I cannot answer because most of the intricacies which are imbibed in the profession as well as this, because I cannot go against the government or I cannot go against the policy or something like that. Okay, but overall, the questions which were raised are perfectly right. But who is going to bell the cat? That is my question. Yes, it is required to achieve sustainable transportation and health affair, but ultimately, can we do it on a voluntary basis or we have to look before the government to do everything? And that is again a question which I cannot take directly.
Okay, sir. So I'll be summarizing this particular session. What you have mentioned, sir, regarding the sustainable transportation. So I just want to highlight as a conclusion, whatever the policies and acts are there regarding the smart city concept that is related to transportation. Yes, that is definitely from the government side. Yes, they have to implement. But as a citizens, so we have to take the responsibilities not to be very careless. Of course, going ahead with the, as you have mentioned, some of the action plans regarding the transportation like electric vehicles and of course one of the concept is also carpooling and other whatever the aspects. So as the citizens, even we can also take care, at least a small percentage we can definitely contribute for the smart city concept. So that is how I conclude. Yes, government rules are there. So government has to take up the responsibilities, go ahead with the action plan. But as a citizens, even we can also be involved in these activities, directly or indirectly. That's how I conclude. So, sir, it is a very informative session and a very good session you have given, sir. You have presented, and thank you very much for accepting to be the one of the expert speakers in this particular aspect called as the smart city concept. Sir, with your permission, I would like to share the PPTs and your contact number or email to the participants which they have asked. So can I share your presentation and as well as your contact number or email to the participants, sir?
Yeah, yeah, please. And I also finally thank you for giving me an opportunity because generally government officials will not be given chances. So
Yes, sir, definitely no.
I
Even
have to thank.
no, because in our college, in most of the cases, we definitely do have the consultation with the pollution control board. So definitely, they
Yes.
play a major role in the society. So definitely, I would like to thank you for presenting on behalf of Civil Engineering Department, Ramaya Institute of Technology. I definitely give a vote of thanks to you, sir.
Thank you very much, madam. Once again, thank you for yourself and all the other coordinators and Dr. Uma Devi ma'am and HOD sir. Please convey my regards to them.
Yes,
And thank you very much to all the participants who sat for the last 1.5 hours. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And participants,
Thank you. Thank you.
link will be shared within a few minutes. I think one of the organizers, Swati Madam, has already given the details. So you can connect. So the session starts at 2 o'clock, 2 to 2:30. The details also will be sent. Participants. I hope the session will be useful for your further projects. And regarding the smart city, you can just go ahead. You can think about a new innovative ideas and proceed with whatever the sir has given you tips, technical aspects. Thank you, dear participants. We'll meet at 1:45 or 1:50. The session will start at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಹೇಗಿತ್ತು? ಓಕೆನಾ?
ಲೀವ್ ಕಾಲ್ ಅದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ ಅಲ್ಲ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್, ನನಗೆ ಈ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಕಾಲ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ ಅಲ್ಲ
ಬಂತಾ? ಅಲ್ಲ, ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಜನ ಬರೀ ಇದನ್ನೇ ಕೇಳ್ತಿದಾರಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್, ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್ನ.
ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಅದೇ ಅಷ್ಟು
ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್
ಕಾಪಿ ಪೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳಕ್ಕೆ
ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಟೆಂಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅದೇ ಕೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಕಾಪಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ಅಟೆಂಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಒಂದು ಮಾತ್ರ ಬೇಕು ಸರ್. ಅಟೆಂಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಸರ್ಟಿಫಿಕೇಟ್ ಬೇಕು ಸರ್. ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಟೆಂಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಶೀಟು ಅಂದರೆ ಈಗ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊತೀವಲ್ಲ ಅದನ್ನು ಕಳಿಸಿದ್ದೆ ನಾನು ಅದು ಬರೀ ಅದನ್ನು ಮಾತ್ರ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಸರ್.
ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಒಬ್ಬರು ಪಾರ್ಟಿಸಿಪೆಂಟ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಬ್ರೋಚರ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ಸ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ.
ಅಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್, ಅಟೆಂಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀರ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಆ ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ ಗ್ರೂಪಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಲಿಂಕ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಸೆಷನು, ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸೆಷನು, ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲ ಒಂದು ಸೆಷನ್. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಬಿ ಸೆಂಟ್ ಅಟ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಮಿಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಸೆಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಹಾಕಿ ಟೈಮ್ ಏನು ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರೋಚರು ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಡ್ತೀರಾ?
ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಯಾರೆಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ ರಿಪ್ಲೈ ಕಳಿಸಿದಾರೋ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ರಿಪ್ಲೈ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
ಬ್ರೋಚರ್ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲ
ಈಗ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆನೂ ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿರೋರು ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಾವು ಕುತ್ಕೊಂತಿರೋಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತಾ? ಮೇಡಮ್, ಮೇಲ್ ಐ ಡಿ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ ಮೇಲ್ ಕ್ಲಿಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಮೇಲ್ ಐ ಡಿ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಮೇಲ್ ಐ ಡಿ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದರೆ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಕಳಿಸಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಇವತ್ತು ಆಗಿರೋರಿಗೆ ಮೇಲ್ ಐ ಡಿ ಇತ್ತು ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಕಳಿಸಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಹುಡುಕಾಡಿ ಬಂದು ಈಗ ಕಳ್ಸೋದು ಈಗ
ಅದೇನೆ, ಯಾರು ಸ್ಪೀಕರು ಯಾರು ಇದ್ದು ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಟಕ್ಕಂತ ಕಳಿಸ್ತೀವಿ ಮೇಡಮ್. ಅದೇನೆ
ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಫೋಟೋ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವೋ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ.